Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Have Your Say video.
Please, just stop.
And this video is for Drag Race UK Season 7 Episode 8. So today I'm going to be recapping the episode, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll where you at home get to vote on whether you agree with the outcome of the episode. And I'll be going through some unrelated recent light drama to do with Trixie Mattel getting some backlash. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Also, before we start, I'd just like to say I'd love to get to 140k subscribers by the end of the year because it's almost the end of the year. I've just got a little bit left to go, so please make sure you hit that subscribe button to fulfill all of my goals and dreams for 2025. And if you don't, then you hate my channel and you hate drag. Okay, so let's start by recapping the episode. So we find out that this week's episode is the Makeover Challenge. Yay!
Oh, bitch, here we go.
I know I say this every week, so I know I sound like a little hater, but this is not my favorite challenge. I just find it can be quite boring and whatever, but we know it comes every season, so I just have to kind of get over it. I will say this was actually quite an enjoyable episode and I did like it because of the guest stars. So let's get into that now. So we find out that for the makeover, the guest stars are called Huns, and it's basically a group of celebrities. I would say these celebrities are pretty well known in the UK, but maybe outside of the UK, not so much. So I'll just quickly go through who they were. So first up, we had Michelle McManus. So she's a Scottish singer. She was on a show, I believe, called Pop Idol in the early 2000s, which was a bit like X Factor, one of those, and she won. So she was quite famous after that, and she had a couple of quite famous songs. Then we had Diane Parrish, who is an actress on EastEnders, which is a very famous, probably the most famous British soap opera. I personally haven't watched EastEnders since I was a child, so I didn't know who she was, but I know obviously what EastEnders is. It's very famous. Then we had Charlotte Church. She's a Welsh singer. She was maybe the most famous of everyone, I think. So she started out singing when she was very young and she did more classical music. But then as she got older, she started moving more into pop. And at one point, she was also married to quite a famous rugby player. So they were quite a famous couple before they divorced. So yeah, she's quite famous for that and having quite a long running career. Then we had Shobna Gulati. I knew her because she was on a comedy show from quite a while ago called Dinner Ladies. I think it's from like the 90s or 2000s. She's also on Coronation Street, which is another very famous British soap opera. I also don't watch that, but I obviously know what it is. And I think she was also at one point on the panel of Loose Women, which is a panel show with all women. It's a bit like The View in America, but it's the British version. Then we had Dani Harmer. She's an actress and her most famous role is in a show called Tracy Beaker, where she plays Tracy Beaker, which was based on a novel by Jacqueline Wilson, I believe. And it was a very famous children's TV show about a girl who grows up in a foster care home and about her life and the trials and tribulations of that. And there's also been lots of different spin-offs over the years. And finally, we had David Potts. I recognized him, I think, from social media, but I didn't know much about him. Apparently, he was on a show called Ibiza Weekender, which is a reality TV show where they get young people on holiday in places like Ibiza and these sort of party locations and just film them. And I think he's been on multiple other reality shows like Big Brother since then. So he's become famous from being on all of these different reality shows. Okay, let's actually get straight into the makeover looks because there is other things that happen in the episode, but we're just going to skip past that and get to the actual main event. So first up, we had Catherine Feelings and Shirley Bassey. First of all, Shirley Bassey is a great pun name for a sheep. Obviously, Shirley Bassey is what that's a play on, who's a Welsh singer. In terms of the outfits, unfortunately, this was probably my least favorite of all of the makeovers. It was a cute idea to do sheep because obviously Welsh sheep, you know, that's a pretty famous connotation of Wales. But I just don't think the execution was very good. As they said, I think Shirley's outfit was just really ill-fitting. It just looked really messy, unfortunately. It also took me a while to realize they were sheep unless they had explained it because it just didn't really look like sheep. So unfortunately, I'd have to give this a nay. In terms of the Have Your Say poll, I think you agreed because it was 66.7% for nay, so the majority, 30% for just okay, and then only 3.1% for yay. Next up, we had Elle Vosk and Vanity Vosk. These outfits are cute. I like the colors. It's a very safe look, I will say, but it is done very well, as the judges said. I remember thinking, this is if you had to bring a look that you think, okay, this is definitely not going to land me in the bottom, but I'm probably also not going to win, this would be it. I really enjoyed the colors. They're really well done. They match really well. I do think there is family resemblance and the makeup was really good, but it wasn't amazing. So I think I would give it a just okay. And I think you agreed with me because you said 65.1% for just okay, 19.5% for yay, but they're not that far behind was nay with 15.4. After that, we had bones and blood. This look was amazing. Both of them looked so good. I loved the fact that it was playing with gender. Like, is it male? Is it female? Is it somewhere in between? Like, I'm not bisexual because, as we know, I'm straight.
Really, queen?
But even I was like, oh, hello. Like, I was getting a bit hot under the collar watching this. Like, if this is what it looks like to become a vampire or a vampire bride, where do I sign up? Because they looked amazing. These costumes were great. The hair and makeup was great. The chemistry between them was palpable. I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, this was such an amazing outfit. So this was definitely a yay. And I think you agreed because you voted 97.4% for yay. So I mean, that's pretty conclusive, I would say, even if you didn't go to school for math.
I didn't go to school for math.
Just okay got 2.1%, and nay, I can't even read it because it's too small.
That's what she said.
After that, we had Selects Addiction and Seduce Addiction. This was such an amazing look. I loved the concept for this. I also thought Seducer, the makeover partner, looked incredible. She was selling it. Like, she was probably selling it more than Selexa was. The makeup was incredible. I loved their chemistry. I loved the storyline they had throughout the episode. They just seemed so lovely together and stuff. This was probably my second favorite of all of the looks. It was really done well. So definitely a yay for me. And it looks like you did agree, although I was maybe thinking it was going to be more yay than it was. It was 83.1% for yay, which is still a lot, but then it was 14.3 for just okay. I personally would have said it way more towards the yay side than just okay, and then 2.6 for nay. After that, we had Tyrus and Daenerys. I definitely got that this was a Clueless reference. I haven't watched Clueless in a long time. Maybe I should watch Clueless again. So I definitely recognize the outfits, although I can't remember that much about the storyline. It's perfectly nice. I think it's kind of safe. We all know Clueless. It's a big reference. They use it all the time on Drag Race and things like that. The outfits, I think, were somewhat successful and they do look nice. I think there is family resemblance depending on how you look at it, but I wouldn't say they necessarily stand out as being the best outfits, but I also don't think they were the worst either.
I ain't saying I'm the best, but I ain't the worst.
I do think I would probably give this a just okay, but it would be a just okay towards the yay side. And I think maybe you felt a similar way to me because you voted 57.3% for just okay, 23.7% for nay, which actually was higher than yay. I probably would have put it the other way around, but then yay got 19%. And then finally, we had Bonnie and Clyde and Marianne Joseph. First of all, Marianne Joseph is a great drag name and it pairs so well with Bonnie and Clyde. Like, that is a genius name. In terms of the outfits, this was really not very good, unfortunately, and she knew this was not great. I can see why, though, because she did have to effectively make the outfit again because she had to adjust it so much. So it probably was quite a big undertaking in a lot of ways to try and change the outfit. But yeah, it was just not very good. It was a little bit sloppy. It didn't really fit either of them that well. I feel like, yeah, there was something that didn't quite connect for me. I can see the concept, but I feel like maybe she should have just gone with a slightly simpler concept and it probably would have worked better. So unfortunately, although I really loved their presentation, they were so funny, I would have to give them a nay. I think you did agree as well because you actually gave 77.9% for nay, which I think might be the highest proportion we've had so far, 17.4% for just okay, and then 4.7% for yay. I then asked you who gets the slay, as in the best makeover runway, and you voted 84.1% for Bones, 13.5% for Selects Addiction, and Elle Vosk with 1.6%. I definitely agree. To me, it was Bones, and then everyone else was somewhere underneath. Bones absolutely smashed it. I don't think you can compare hers to anyone else. Although I would say if there was a second place, it would have been Celexa. But yeah, Bones definitely gets the slay for me. I loved this. I want her to suck my blood. So moving on to the winner, and we find out that the winner is Bones. And I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, do you agree with the winner? And you said 91.1% for yes and only 8.9% for no. So pretty conclusive. So of that, around 9% who said no, you did not agree. I said, who do you think should have won instead? And again, a pretty decisive result, which was Select's Addiction got 97.1% and Tayris got 2.9%. Then moving on to the flip side, we get the bottom two, and we find out it is Katrin Feelings and Bonnie and Clyde. In the Have Your Say poll, I said, did you agree with the bottom two? You said 64.8% for yes, but then still a decent amount said no with 35.2%. So for those of you who said no, which was over a third of you, I said, who do you think should have been the bottom two? You voted Tayris Mongardi with 74.8, then it was Katrin Feelings with 48.9, and not that far behind was Bonnie and Clyde with 44.4. So it looks like you think the bottom two should have been Tayris and Katrin rather than Bonnie and Katrin. So Bonnie and Katrin then lip sync to the song Push the Button by the Sugar Babes, because Muchia Buena from the Sugar Babes was the guest judge this week. And we find out that Katrin wins the lip sync and is therefore safe, and unfortunately, Bonnie and Clyde is eliminated. I asked you in the Have Your Say poll, who do you think won the lip sync? And you voted 56% for Bonnie and Clyde, which goes against what happened in the actual episode, and then 44% for Katrin. So it was not actually that far off a 50-50 split. I find this very difficult because
you're dumb.
I don't know. I feel like I do agree that Katrin probably captured the song a bit more because she was doing just comedy the whole way through, whereas Bonnie was doing more a little bit of comedy, but then a lot of dance, which didn't quite match the song. It was a bit too much for the song. But I will say, I think in terms of track record and who deserved to win, I think Bonnie should have stayed and Katrin should have gone, because Bonnie has, 2 badges and Katrin has none. So I think Katrin won the lip sync, but Bonnie probably deserved to stay more. Then, moving on to the last two questions. Question 6 was, which queen do you think will win the season? And again, this has been a recurring theme now for quite a few weeks, but Elle Vosk came out on top, but only just, with 54.4%. And then Bones was not that far behind with 41.1%. And Select's Addiction came in third, but only got 3.1%. And then similarly, question 7 was, which queen do you want to win the season? This was a bit more interesting because it was a lot more split. Bones actually came out on top for this one, only just, with 34.1%. Then it was Elle Vosk with 29.2%. Then it was Select's Addiction with 16.1%. Tayris got 10.9%, and Katrin got 9.6%. So it looks like you think that Elle will win, although Bones still got a decent amount, but more of you want Bones to win than Elle. Okay, so let's move on to the comments for this week, starting with my Patreon comments. My Patreon Hermit Queen Jude said, are they setting Katrin up for the crown, even though her performance so far has been very mid? Okay, say what you really think. I kind of agree in the sense, I don't think they're setting her up for the win, but I do agree that maybe she probably shouldn't have stayed this week, although she won the lip sync, in my opinion. I think Bonnie was more of a contender for the crown than Katrin is, but maybe Katrin had more storylines because obviously the whole Tayris thing, and Tayris is still in the competition. Maybe next week we're going to get a Tayris versus Katrin lip sync. My Patreon Jessica said Blood and Bones' makeover was breathtaking. As I said, I was in love with this. I literally fell in love with both of them. I don't know what that says about my sexuality. I'm questioning all of it, but yeah, definitely amazing. My Patreon Patty said something that I think a lot of people were thinking, which was, it's a shame that Bonnie and Clyde got eliminated. I didn't expect that. I thought she would be in the finale. I agree with that. To be fair, she had the worst makeup and outfit. Maybe that's fair. As for the lip syncing, I thought it was just meh. It could have happened to either of them, but I guess that what we could see, Katrin sold it better, which is kind of what I thought. My Patreon Deb said, it feels like it's the first time in a while there's no clear winner emerging, especially this far into the competition. However, whilst I can't pick out a front runner, I also don't really care who wins, and not in a good way. We'll move on to this a bit more in a minute because there were comments in the Have Your Say poll about this, but I agree. I don't think there's a definitive winner so far. far, unlike usual seasons, because I think the season so far has been a little bit meh, to be honest. So yeah, I guess we'll find out. But ending on a slightly more positive comment, my Patreon Riot said, having TV personalities as makeovers, mwah. That's me inserting a chef's kiss, by the way.
Please stop immediately.
This was so entertaining and so fun to watch them all interact. The stories and experiences being shared were very compelling. I was charmed by all of them. I definitely agree. To me, that's what sold the episode. Probably because they're all celebrities and they're used to being on camera. It was a bit sort of more fun and entertaining watching them. Other times on makeover challenges, you get family members and stuff, which is nice, but sometimes it can be a bit awkward because you can tell they don't want to be on camera. But I did really enjoy that all of the makeover partners this time seemed genuinely excited to be on and very at ease with being on camera, so I definitely enjoyed that. Moving on to the comments from the Have Your Say poll, there were a lot of comments about Bonnie's elimination, saying things like, I'm really shocked at Bonnie's elimination. She was doing incredibly well and I'm sad to see her go. This is crazy now that 3 badge winners have been eliminated. I hadn't thought about this, but yeah, I think there were quite a few queens that had just 1 badge, like Paige or whatever, and they've now been eliminated, so it is kind of crazy. There were also a lot of comments that I guess were sort of to do with that, saying things like, I'm not even mad, just confused at this point. I'm very shocked they've sent 3 frontrunners home back to back. There were also quite a few comments that had a similar theme, basically saying that they thought Bones won for the storyline because obviously she was in the bottom last week and then won this week. I think that probably is partly to do with it, but I do think Bones definitely deserved the win because no one else came close to how good she was this week. But there was also other comments which were kind of saying all the favourites of frontrunners have been swept away to give Bones an easier win. Or given the public reaction, giving the win to Elle could now be seen as less controversial but a boring outcome. And there were quite a lot of comments basically saying that they think Elle and or Bones are being set up for the win. But let me know what you think. Do you think this season hasn't got a clear winner because they're all at the same level? Or is it just because maybe the queens have been a bit meh this season, as some people have said? And finally, we're going to move on to a little bit of light recent drama unrelated to Drag Race UK, which involves Trixie Mattel receiving some backlash. As many of you will know, Trixie has a popular YouTube channel with millions of subscribers where she posts a variety of videos and she often has guests on. Well, Trixie recently did a video with comedian Whitney Cummings and has received a huge amount of backlash because of it. Just to give you some background in case you don't know, Whitney Cummings is a comedian and actress who is perhaps best known for her stand-up specials and also appearing on the Comedy Central roasts. Some of you may also remember that she was a guest judge on season 17 during the Villains Roast Challenge. At the time, Drag Race also got a lot of backlash for having Whitney on the show because of some problematic things that Whitney has said, and I'll go through some of them now. One of the things was that back in January 2025, this was during the time when there were large destructive fires in Los Angeles. Lots of people lost their homes, had to be evacuated, and multiple people died. During this time, Whitney posted a video on social media, which was since deleted, where she seemingly spread a conspiracy theory about lesbian firefighters. Whitney was talking about Kristen Cowley, who was the first openly LGBT+ fire chief in LA. When Kristen got appointed, it got a lot of criticism, with some people saying that she was a, quote, DEI hire, which stands for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. And a DEI hire usually implies that the person only got the role because they fulfill a quota of a certain underrepresented group, rather than because they have the relevant experience. However, Whitney implied that the gay women who run the LA Fire Department are, quote, recruiting more lesbians to work there, and, quote, isn't that essentially just recruiting people in your dating pool to work at your office? I don't recall voting on a prop that said we could recruit our team off Grindr. Whitney then got a huge amount of backlash for these comments, with people saying that she was spreading a wild conspiracy theory that was also anti-LGBT. Another controversy was that back in early January 2025, Whitney did a comedy set on the CNN New Year's broadcast where she was roasting 2024. Whitney told a joke that she cut from her set due to time constraints, which was, quote, Shania Twain's on the show tonight reminds me of this year's Paris Olympic theme, Man, I Feel Like a Woman. This was presumably referring to Imani Khalif, who is an Algerian boxer who won gold at the Paris Olympics, but misinformation about her circulated online that falsely claimed that she was trans and that she had been born a man, even though this was later proven to be false. And Imani received a lot of hate and death threats because of this false information. So Whitney was heavily criticised for telling this joke that was perceived to be anti-trans. The most recent controversy, though, involving Whitney was to do with the Riyadh Comedy Festival in September/October 2025. This was a comedy festival held in the city of Riyadh, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia, and the festival was government-sponsored. The festival featured a lineup of many well-known comedians. However, the festival was heavily criticised because of the Saudi government's poor human rights record, anti-LGBT laws, as well as censorship that was imposed on the performers, which controlled what they were and weren't allowed to say. So all of the celebrities who performed at the festival got a lot of backlash as they were seen to be taking money from a country that violates human rights, among other things. Many celebrities defended performing at the festival, including Whitney, who addressed the backlash on her podcast, where she seemed to say that the people who were criticizing her were actually racist.
I guess I'm this weirdo. I don't operate under, the idea that every government and their people are the same. But I guess that's like, you think that the people of Saudi Arabia and the Saudi government all share. Okay, so you also believe that the Chinese government and the Chinese people are exactly the same. It's just racism. I think it took me a second, because when people are going like, oh, you're doing something unethical, I'm like, oh, these must be ethical people, let me listen. And then you're like, oh no, you're just racist.
But people in the comments pointed out that Whitney had previously talked on her podcast about how bad censorship is, but then she did the festival, which was heavily censored by the Saudi Arabian government. So they called Whitney out for being hypocritical, and they also said that her calling people racist was a wild take. There were also some other unverified reports and videos about another criticism of Whitney back in 2024. The criticism was that Whitney's boyfriend is a famous skater called Chris Cole. Chris's ex-wife has allegedly accused Chris of domestic violence, and all of Chris's skater merch was subsequently removed from an online store because of it. Allegedly, Whitney helped Chris get a cease and desist against his ex-wife, and allegedly implied that she was lying. So people have accused Whitney of trying to help silence an alleged victim of abuse. However, as I said, this story is somewhat unverified and is just alleged from what I can see, so I can't guarantee if this is true or not, but I've seen lots of people mentioning it in the comments about Whitney, which is why I'm mentioning it. The YouTube channel Too Lazy to Try did a video about this story, so I'll link to that in the description. And so, because of all of these things, Whitney has become somewhat controversial over the past few years, which is why Trixie received a huge amount of backlash in her recent video where Whitney was a guest on her channel. If you look at the video, pretty much all of the comments are very critical and scathing towards Trixie, questioning why she has Whitney on her channel. People also mentioned the Riyadh Comedy Festival, Whitney's potential anti-LGBT comments, but also that Trixie was platforming someone problematic. There were also other comments suggesting that Trixie has, quote, sold out, and that her team may have done their research about Whitney, but they just didn't care, and they had her on the channel anyway. I also thought it would be interesting to check how many dislikes the video has got. Although you can't see dislikes publicly on YouTube anymore, there are websites that show you the dislikes on a video. Trixie's video with Whitney has a dislike ratio of 69%, with almost 4,000 dislikes versus only 1,700 likes. And just for comparison's sake, Trixie's other most recent video with Plasma had a dislike ratio of only 1%, with 145 dislikes versus 15,000 likes. So it seems pretty clear that people were not happy that Trixie had Whitney on her channel, and the dislikes on the video reflect that. The video is still up on Trixie's account, and Trixie hasn't addressed the backlash as of yet from what I can see. Even though people have also commented on Trixie's most recent Instagram posts, asking if she's going to address the backlash. Trixie also usually promotes any new videos by posting about them on Instagram and Twitter, but she hasn't done any promotion so far for the video with Whitney. This may just be a coincidence, or maybe Trixie has seen the backlash and decided not to promote the video elsewhere, but this is just supposition. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with this and whether Trixie ever addresses it. But I just thought this was interesting because Trixie rarely gets this amount of backlash, so I thought this was newsworthy of putting in a video. But as I always say, please do not send hate to anyone involved. These videos are just for educational and entertainment purposes, so just consume this type of content passively and don't get involved. So there you go, there was the Have Your Say video for RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 7 Episode 8. Let me know what you thought of this makeover challenge, and let me know what you think of Drag Race UK Season 7 overall. If you want to get your comments featured in my videos, have early access to my videos, as well as a raft of other exclusive benefits such as the exclusive Patreon chat, priority when submitting interview questions, and full-length interviews, please check out my Patreon. It's a cheap way to support the channel and I'd really appreciate it, and I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description. I'd also like to say thank you so much to all of my incredible Patreon members. I really appreciate your support. It is so amazing and it is such a huge support for my channel, especially during this off period when there's less to talk about. But having your support honestly is such a massive difference. So thank you all so much. Please make sure you like and comment on this video to help boost it in the algorithm and promote it to more people. And please make sure you smash that subscribe button and help me get to 140k subscribers by the end of the year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll join me in the future for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets, and drama. Thank you so much. Bye.